richer, more fulfilling, and I mean certainly probably
Yeah.
you know, to a level you became maybe even your fondness for comics probably grew exponentially as you got to interview a lot of these great creators. So what would, you know, what are kind of, what would you say was probably one of the most, you know, aside from that first second season jump, it was probably one of the biggest leaps that the show took forward?
Well, Watchmen was a big one. As I mentioned Friday night, that Mark met the screenwriter for the movie and was asking, I guess was interviewing him for Space, or maybe just met him at a party, one of the promotional parties, but got talking. He said, you really nailed it, you got the spirit of it, you understood the background and all that. How did you get that? He said, well, it was this television show I saw. It was a fellow sitting somewhere and he talked to people about it, but it really kept. And Mark's like, Prisoners of Gravity? Yes, that was it, yeah. That was me. It really was Mark, you know. It's like, but I think when that one went to air, what was interesting was, as well as the story and everything that was interesting about it, and having Alan Moore and having Dave Gibbons and others comment, was the comments from everyone else about, it was like they were discussing film. It was a serious art form at this point. And they were relating it to the history going backwards, going forwards. How do you do comics? You know, Alan Moore said, I'm not sure you could do superheroes after this. That was my goal, was to make it, you know, to have the ultimate statement. He sits gone and done them. So he found a way, but it was an interesting, in a way, a gauntlet that he'd thrown down. So you got to hear people who are very serious about what they do. And I think sometimes maybe overly serious because it's been taken dismissed the other way. You know,
they went to the extreme to try to.
Yeah, I mean, they really took, you know, they took themselves seriously. Neil Gaiman really cultivated an image. Alan Moore became this you know,
icon.
Yeah, and had strong opinions about what people should or should not be doing, and so on. So I just got a sense at that point, and then when we interviewed Will Eisner was the other. That was. And you saw the length of his work and the stuff that he'd done. That was really, those were the episodes where you just thought, this is as good as anything I'm doing anywhere on a book show. And I think the structure of it at that point allowed us, everything I thought of when I sort of developed the idea of this being up in space and being able to talk to anyone and everyone, that it was starting to pay off. And we also now had a library by the 5th season. We were using a clip we'd been hanging on to since the 2nd season, or 1st season. It's like, now we get to use that fantastic quote you know, there's the other one, the imprint went and interviewed Salman Rushdie, so we got to throw in 3 questions. So when it came to talk to Salman Rushdie, I went, let me just talk to Salman Rushdie. As I pushed the button, this sort of thing. And I, at the time, at first it seemed kind of silly, the tropes of being up there, but it took you somewhere special. I think it was like going into someone's basement and just, wow, look what you got, what? Wow, or into a story you'd never heard of. So there was a kind of magical element to that which set a tone early on. We always opened it with a fake. The idea was I'm a pirate broadcaster and I'm in this satellite and I can interrupt. So we had this fake nature show, Second Nature. And then I played the host, Enrico Gruen, which was a name I'd used years earlier when I wrote for Smith & Smith on the slide without the Writers Guild knowing, because then they'd have to, Steve would have had to pay me extra or something. So if you look at the old Smith & Smith show, there's a script by Enrico Gruen. It's kind of an Italian version of Rick Green, and not really. So we're out in the street and we're trying to film this nature host, but we're in downtown Toronto, Yonge and Eglinton. So we're going to this small park and trying to get angles where the traffic noise from Yonge Street is too loud. And we filmed like 25 or 30 of these things, you know, coming up solar power, or, you know, new solar powered nightlight, or whatever it would be. These dumb comment, and then you dissolve. What happened is the first season, we made a mistake. The banjo music in the opening going like 25, 30 seconds, and this a voiceover, this week on, and there'd be a funny comment. But you know, people got, Prisoners of Gravity, I want to see that. Second Nature. No, the guide's even wrong. And you're gone. And so you went to think, I wanted to say, there was some stupid nature show on.
Ran a little too long.
Yeah, so then it was down to like 4 seconds. Greetings, prisoners, and like right away.
Did there ever come a point in time later, as you were, you're doing more interviews, you're developing a stronger body of work, basically, when you're kind of getting into 4th and 5th seasons, did a moment ever come around when you thought, you know what, maybe we should kind of maybe lose the comedy bit and try to take this a bit more seriously and maybe try to run, was the comedy potentially alienating some of the broader audience you were trying to reach out to?
It could have been alienating, and I'm sure it was for some people. The comedy was always at the expense of the sky and space stuff. So that was, it wasn't like we were ever disrespectful for making fun of comics. So that was the key to me, is that the comedy had to be about my struggles, and when it was about the character living in space, or if it was an editorial comment on, whatever the politics would have been back then, Ronald Reagan, and so on. So, because I was, you didn't want me sitting there serious. If you wanted serious, get Neil Gaiman to host it, or whatever. Well, actually, you'd be funny too. Get Alan Moore to host it.
But you don't think it wouldn't have worked as just a typical book show?
It might have, but I don't know that it would have. Yeah, it might have worked better, it might have worked worse. I just, my feeling always going in, and I came up with the ideas when it was still going to be 8 minutes between Doctor Who, right? So it was, and the idea was that I was controlling it. When it was that, I think even then, my viewpoint was always that science fiction itself takes all of these issues, and comics take all of these issues, and fantasy and horror, they all speculative fiction takes and already starts playing with the reality of it. So it's like, what I hoped it was clever. It was layers upon layers upon layers, which allows you then to create some ironic distance. It allowed us, physically what it allowed us to do was to jump between people to, and very quickly pull up people from all over the place and not look, I didn't want it to look like another book show. Because we're talking about, designing an alien. There was one of the episodes, alien, how to design an alien. It's like you could have done it as Nova, or, a state or something, but it was, and I also think it's, unlike a lot of book shows, which are, when you're interviewing someone, Rushdie or someone, you're really dealing with they're very often are taking their art very seriously. Inherently, there was a creative lightness to the people, a lot of the people we interviewed. There was just, first of all, they loved what they were doing. So, very often there was just, they were delighted to be on TV, but they were delighted to be doing, drawing comic books for a living, or making a living as a science fiction writer. And that, if you see the early interviews with Robert Sawyer, he'd had 1 or 2 books out at that point when we started. And he lived up in Thornhill. It was a short subway ride down. So whenever we got stuck, we really need a quote from here to here. They'd call. He'd come down. What do you need? We need you to bridge from, the Berserkers to the 2010 Space Odyssey. Okay. And he'd ride down the subway. He'd arrive at TVO, makeup on, and we borrow a camera from someone who was shooting that day. Sit him down, and he'd offer 2 or 3 answers, and thank you, and then it would go. We have the link, that bridge that we just weren't able to.
Nice to have those kind of short-term connections.
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who do the quick thing.
Yeah. So there was that level of just enthusiasm about it, and it's just, look at a convention, people walking around as Imperial stormtroopers. There's a level of joy and role-playing in every aspect of this, not just in the role-playing games.
And that carried, the creativity of it carried over as well to the writing staff of your creating the shows. You say you went along